Hello and welcome back to It's a Grand Old Team to Play For, Episode 2, or as it's known, Grand Old Team Episode 2. You can see from the title there, it's Charlie Nicolas Express Delivery, and that might give you a clue as to what we're talking about tonight. I'm Tony Haggerty, at Haggerty10 on the Twitter handle. I'm joined once again by Kevin McKenna, and we did a podcast last week. We started the Grand Old Team, and we were overwhelmed by the messages of support and love that you gave us. So thank you for that. So Kevin, on the back of that rip-roaring success, we're back for another week until they start throwing the rotten fruit and all that and put us in the stocks.
Okay. I get the picture.
So how are you, sir? Are you well?
Yeah, buzzing, living a dream.
Excellent. Now we'll take the time machine back to 1981, Kevin, aren't we? And let's just say we'll have a wee musical interlude to give you a clue as to why we're doing that.
Right. This is, by way of introduction, this was my favourite sports theme tune of all time.
And now it's time to join Harry Carpenter for Sports Night.
Yes.
That dancing. Like finish now.
Good evening. Our main action tonight features football, boxing, and skiing.
And that was a great man himself, Harry Carpenter, introducing football, boxing, and skiing from, I think it was a particular night in 1982. But the night we're featuring, Kevin, is 1981, when Celtic went to Wembley Arena, no less, and waltzed off with the highly prestigious Daily Express five-a-side challenge trophy. I was 9 years of age, Kevin. It was my brother's 11th birthday, and me, my brother, and my father sat in the bedroom that me and my brother shared, watching it on a colourful portable television. There you go. You can't beat that for memories, can you? You can't
Well, I was a wee bit older. I was 18. I think it was October, November? It's kind of
November
late.
the 25th, 1981. Yep.
So, I'd watched the fives, the Daily Express fives, for a few years. You were always aware they were on because the BBC had the exclusive rights to them, and there was something quite magical about them because we all played fives. I was at an age where we were playing fives regularly, and seeing top footballers play this version of the game that you play. It's far more identifiable, that you're saying that's the same setting, it's the same sort of it's the same sort of indoor arena. Okay, there's a few hundred fans. I think it's the Wembley Arena that it was played in.
Wembley Arena,
So it was magical, and I'd always been aware that Celtic sent down a team. I don't know of too many other Scottish teams. It was invitation only.
Yeah. Rangers used to get invited, and Celtic got to the final 73, lost to Derby. And in 1981, they became the only Scottish side to win the Daily Express five-a-side.
Only Scottish side ever to have won.
Yeah.
Um,
And the reason I say that, I mean, it was highly prestigious because it was networked, and the teams took it seriously. Now, in the 1981 competition, Kevin, Crystal Palace were there, Ipswich were there, they had just won the UEFA Cup, Manchester United were there, they had just signed Ray Wilkins and Brian Robson, Arsenal were there, Birmingham, Chelsea, Coventry, Everton, Queen's Park Rangers, Southampton, who twice European Player of the Year, Kevin Keegan and Mick Mills in their team, Swansea, Watford, West Bromwich Albion, West Ham United, and, as it says, top Scottish clubs, Celtic, Rangers. So it was invite only. John Watson was commentating on it as well. Harry introduced the programme, and that was a big thing. That I think, in my lifetime, or certainly think that it's the first time I'd seen Celtic networked. It was a school night. It was on 25 to 10. It came on. I was 9 years of age. It felt that I was up dead late and I was defying laws and stuff like that. The school laws when you go to your bed at 9 o'clock or 8:30 or whatever it was. But it was just brilliant to see Celtic competing against all of these English. They would have been first division clubs back then, the old English first division and old money. And so when you knew Harry Carpenter was presenting it seemed like a big deal, didn't it?
Yeah. For anyone who doesn't, who's maybe not old enough to remember Sports Night, it was a magical programme.
Yeah,
it's almost midweek. It came on after the news, didn't it? The 9 o'clock news. And, when you were at school, you wouldn't normally be allowed up to watch it that late. It was only special occasions. Yeah. I think the first time I might have been allowed to stay up for it was 1972, when I was 9 or 10, because Wolves, Tottenham Hotspur were playing Wolves in the UEFA Cup final. And it was the first time that two English sides had faced each other in the UEFA Cup final. That was the old. Yeah, it was. It was UEFA Cup.
It was UEFA Cup, yeah. Tottenham and what? Wolverhampton. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was two legs. I think Tottenham won quite narrowly over the two legs. But it was, just now and again you would be allowed up to watch. But like you, I was at university at the time, and my hero at that time was Charlie Nicolas. I'd seen him play. It was the previous season. I think he broke through.
Yeah.
Scoring against Stirling Albion when we were actually struggling in the old League Cup, and then he just took off. Yeah. And we all loved him. And did he, he was a fabulous player, Charlie. I thought he was a fabulous player for us in the few years that we had him, interrupted by that broken leg, of course. But I think the reason why people of my age at that time loved him, worshipped him, was because, well, for me anyway, it was the first time we'd seen a Celtic hero who was our age.
Yeah.
And he was doing our sorts of things. He was living, he wasn't just like, a great player wearing the hoops. He was actually living the dream. He was going out to the sort of places that we went to. He was wearing the sort of dodgy gear that we wore, minus socks, because like he didn't wear socks with his leather loafers.
Yeah.
And his suit.
A fashionista, Kevin, a fashionista, I think you would call him.
He was cool. I mean, he was a cool dude.
The epitome of cool.
And I remember him scoring 2 goals against Rangers at Parkhead.
Yeah.
Was it the start of the
February? It was in February, the 3-1 game. Yeah, February 81, and it was snowing. Derek Johnson gave Rangers a lead, yeah.
We'd been hammered by Rangers at Ibrox.
Yep.
Before Christmas. And Charlie had played, having had a great start of the season, and he didn't, like the rest of them, he didn't really show up. We get beaten 3-0. And so we all turned up at Parkhead in February 81, and it, obviously it wasn't a league decider, but we really had to win that. To have a chance of winning the league. And we won out the park. I mean, it was 3-1, but it was 3 going in 5.
And Charlie, features one of my favourite celebrations, that big Roy the Boy.
And Charlie scored 2 goals. So that's a long way of saying that when the Daily Express 5s came and we knew that Charlie was going to be in the team, it was straight home. And they played. I think they beat Southampton in the final, beat Manchester.
Yeah. I've got all that. Jim Lumsden was in charge. He was a youth coach, Jim Lumsden, and Celtic took down their team. Their squad was made up of Peter Latchford in goal, Willie McStay, Charlie Nick, Danny Craney, Willie Garner, and John Weir. So Charlie was just breaking through to the team at that point, and as you say, Peter Latchford had the big game experience. So they defeated Watford 3-0 in the first round, and then they played Manchester United, and then Manchester United had Lou Macari, and as I said, they just signed Ray Wilkins and Brian Robson, and they were.
I remember Brian Robson playing for them.
And so when they beat Watford 3-0, Nicholas, Craney and McStay scored, and then they played Man U, and they beat Man U 2-0, and Craney get the two of them. So that was them into I think it was the semi-final. But, it's, as you say, that it was great just to see your team competing against these guys, wasn't it? Especially Manchester United. And there was no internet and stuff back then, Kevin. So you're watching this as live on the evening. So you're seeing this highlights package program, but you're watching it, so you don't know the score because
you have no idea.
You have no idea. So you're cheering on your team and you're watching Charlie rip it up. Basically, he was an absolute star. So as you say, they brushed Watford aside, and then they beat Man U, and they're into the semi, and you're thinking, good, you're hoping they can win it, type thing,
I remember my dad after it saying that in fact, it wasn't. My dad mentioned this, but I think John Motson in the commentary, was blown away by Celtic's display and the fact that they were the best players were all these youngsters. Weir, Craney, Nicholas, and I'm pretty sure, as I recall, that that Motson talked about, the big clubs will be setting up, taking notice.
Well, that was the thing that put Charlie firmly on everybody's radar down south because it was networked and everybody could see that this guy was talented. So they play Ipswich in the semi and they defeat Ipswich 3-1. Charlie scores twice, an Ipswich team that's got, they're just off winning the UEFA Cup, and I followed Ipswich's the traverses and travails of Ipswich on Sports Night because Sports Night always seems to feature them. Yeah. And John Walk, I think, scored 13 or 14 in that wonderful campaign, and then they beat Alkmaar 5-4 over two legs in the final. 5-4. They won 3-0 at Portman Road and lost 4-2 away.
Yeah, they were a great team.
Yeah, brilliant team. And Mick Mills was playing. I just remember Mick Mills playing for Ipswich. I don't know, there was something quintessentially English about Mick Mills that I probably didn't like. I'm sure he's a wonderful man and a wonderful person.
No, I had that feeling when Scotland played England in the home internationals. Mick Mills was he just came across as a nasty piece of work, and you just wanted to do him. And then, and he would be playing alongside the likes of Emlyn Hughes, whom you couldn't feel to like, because they just played like a big daft laddie, right? And he was always smiling, and I mean, he was brutal. He was, what a captain! But Mick Mills was the pantomime villain of English football. Yeah. I was delighted.
So Celtic sweep them aside 3-1.
Great, it was great.
Absolutely battered them. And Charlie was just brilliant in the semi. I have to say it. I think that's when John Motson was just like, "Who's this guy?" You know what I mean? He'll be on the lips of everybody after tonight.
I've got to give a shout out to Danny Craney.
Yep.
Because Danny Craney played great.
Yeah, well, Danny Craney would have his moment in the following year, wouldn't he, when he scored in a first minute of a Celtic Rangers game. I think Celtic won 2-1, didn't he? But he bundled it over the line from about 2 inches or something, didn't he? Yeah.
Danny Craney towards the end of that season, the 81-82 season, because here I've got to give some credit to a wonderful website that I always check, the Celtic Wiki. The Celtic Wiki.
Brilliant website. The guys that
I could spend hours watching.
Yeah, you can get lost in that, can't you?
So according to the Celtic Wiki, Charlie Nicolas was the only regular in the six that went down, because there were a mixture of youth, and then you'd Peter Latchford too. By that time, had been replaced by Packy Bonner, Willie Garner. Well, less said about Big Willie, the better. But Danny Craney broke into the side with about 7 or 8 games to go.
Yeah.
And he went on this amazing hot streak. And I went to all these games. He scored something like 6 goals and almost a goal a game.
Yeah.
At that critical time, including, as I recall, he scored a hat-trick against somebody. Who did he score a hat-trick against? But we thought this guy's just going to be different class.
I was going to say Partick Thistle off the top of my head.
Well, that name rings a bell with me too. But it was that game where he bundled the ball home in the first 2 minutes against Rangers at Parkhead. And we all thought he's going places, but it didn't really quite happen for Danny.
And poor Willie Garner, if you're tuning in and you're asking why eyebrows are raised at Willie Garner was just one of life's unfortunates. Cracking football player for Aberdeen, is signed for Celtic. People were saying he had a similar style to Franz Beckenbauer and all that, and I think he was in the papers before he played St Mirren in a sectional League Cup tie saying, "I'm not the new Kaiser." You know what I mean? Franz Beckenbauer, don't label me as that. And fair play to him for that. And he proceeds to have the nightmare debut against St Mirren in a sectional League Cup tie, 1981, I'm sure it was. Celtic lost 3-1 and Willie unfortunately scored 2 OGs. And he just never ever recovers from that, did he, in terms of his Celtic career?
At the risk, I remember that game. Why do I think it was Frank Monroe that scored the 2 OGs?
Definitely Willie Garner.
But definitely Willie Garner.
Yeah. I think one of them actually cannoned off him, like a shot from Sumner or
because we
Lex Richardson or somebody, you know. So
we scored a barrel load in that. We lost the first 2 games of that section. Won the last 4, scoring an average of 4 and 5 a game, and
still went out. And that, you know. But I mean, I've to all intents and purposes, people who talk about Willie Garner, I think he's still involved in football somewhere. So he's a wonderful fella, but just real, a kind of tragedy for him because it was one of them. You never know, do you? You know what might have been. But no, 1981 was a kind of a weird and wonderful year for Celtic, not least of which was the peg that we're hanging this on, Charlie Nicolas Express delivery, and having dismantled Ipswich in the semi. They go on and play Southampton, who have World Cup winner Alan Ball and 2 times European Footballer of the Year, Kevin Keegan, in the lineup. It doesn't really matter. Charlie does the business again. Yep. Charlie scores the only goal, and Celtic walks off with the Daily Express 5-a-side Challenge Trophy, the only Scottish club to do so. And when you're a 9-year-old kid watching it on a portable telly, you are jumping around your bedroom thinking that Celtic have just won like the equivalent of the European Cup because everybody seemed to be taking it serious, and there was lots of big scalps in there, and Celtic claimed them, and they beat a lot of famous teams with famous names in their lineup. So I was going off my head, Kevin. That's just like,
it was great.
And also just because you were watching it, as I say, as live, and it was just great to see Celtic.
We were just so
these guys. Yeah.
I mean, you know, some people maybe watching will think, you know, how excited can you get about winning a 5-a-side tournament, right? But you can't, you know, it's maybe it's just very difficult to convey the kind of sense of Hollywood glam about the Daily Express 5s at the Wembley Arena. The Wembley Arena was a legendary venue in English sport, and there was, you know, big concerts there too. But the BBC would throw the kitchen sink at this. It happened when it happened late in the year. You know, it's just we're just coming into winter. The grounds are getting a bit bogged down, and it was just a bit of light entertainment, and they were always jam packed. And the Daily Express was a massive paper, then, and as I said, you know, I'd watched it 2 or 3 years, thinking I'd love Celtic just to put down a full team. I remember a couple of years prior to that, thinking, why don't they just put down a full team and wipe the floor with them and show what we can do? But so the sense of pride at seeing these young players that we'd you know just seen, you know, getting mentioned in the reserves running, I mean, literally running rings round these storied, legendary English professionals. You know, Manchester United had won the FA Cup in 77, Arsenal had won it in 79, Ipswich had won it in 78, Southampton had won it in 76. Ipswich, as you said, won the old UEFA Cup in 81. And all the big players were there. And just watching Celtic dismantling them by playing this. Because the other thing about the fives, you know, when I played fives, you just kind of went at it full pelt.
Yeah.
But these English sides, you know, you could see some of them trying to play a version of 11-a-side. In fact, you know, they're knocking it about at the back, right? And they're strolling out of defence as if they're playing at the big Wembley in an FA Cup semi, and you're going, that's ridiculous. You know, you just take the ball in a walk, right? And beat as many people as you can and then pick it up again the next time there's a chance, right? But these English players, it was quite odd watching them being cautious. Why would you be cautious in a five-a-side? Celtic kind of just played as if they were playing up the Maryhill pits.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, it's funny you should say that because Charlie was given the accolade of the player of the night, and he said that, Kevin. This is what he said. We decided to run at the English teams and try to shake them out of the possession game they prefer to play. I love five-a-sides. They really sharpen your reactions and give you the chance to show your skills. And he also says, I couldn't believe the atmosphere that is generated in the arena. The noise is quite incredible, and it really lifted me and the other lads. So your memory is not playing tricks. Celtic did get into them and just sort of say, take the mic at them, basically. You know what I mean? You know,
the whole concept of playing possession football on a five-a-side surface, you know, behave yourself.
And you also think as well that the Scottish guys, they're getting wired in, so they're not feeling any kind of. I mean, if it's full tilt at training in a Scottish team, they're giving it. You know, there's many times you've heard of training ground accidents, so they're getting wired in. And I can imagine from Charlie's comments here, they clearly took the English teams by surprise. They were like, "What are you guys doing?" You know, by the time they recovered the balls in the net, or, you know, Celtic were away with it and stuff like that. So it kind of proved it. I mean, Charlie I think he got 4 goals in the tournament, and you know, and as you say, came to prominence, didn't he? People were like, "Who is this guy?" And then he starts to earn the Champagne Charlie moniker, the Cannonball Kid. I remember he won the daily record, first to 30. You know, I think it was the hot shot or something of the season, and I think he presented with a case of champagne, hence the Champagne Charlie moniker and all that kind of stuff. But he really is starting to motor in his career then, isn't he? And that was the kind of first time I had I remember watching that Rangers game that you were referring to and loving them then. But, you know, he was coming to prominence then. You're thinking, this guy's good and he plays for Celtic. He's my HERO hero. But I thought I loved him, but my brother hero worshipped him, Kevin. Like, to the point where, and I'll tell this story because if you're not aware of it, it's just brilliant. Charlie Nicolas is a daily record columnist when I'm working at the record. And so every other week you would have to phone him and do his column as you do. And Charlie Nicolas was one of the best columnists ever. And I used to have black specs like this, right? Kind of 1960s kind of look about them. And he said that I looked like Clark Kent. But instead of calling me Clark Kent, he called me Kryptonite. Either that or he called me Tony Two Toes. I think he got me confused with the guy in the Goodfellas. No, Tony Two Times. I'll get the pipers, get the pipers. He called me Tony Two Toes. So it was one of those. Every time I would phone him, he would say, Tony Two Toes, Kryptonite, how you doing? And we became good mates all through doing the column. So I told my brother this, and my brother was so jealous, and he would say to me, you're really lucky you do what you do for a living. And I said, yeah. I says, one day, I says, I'll return the favour, I promise, you know. I said, don't be jealous, just, you know, fair enough. And Charlie came through with me one day because I was travelling a train somewhere to watch, don't know, I think I was covering Hibs at the time, and I think I was going to Blackpool for a pre-season friendly, because I remember distinctly being on a train, and my brother had given birth to his third girl, and he phones me and he says, "You're an uncle again." He says, "Great." He says, "You're an uncle to Charlie Nicolas, no S." I said, "Sorry." He says, "I told you I was always going to call one of my kids after Charlie." He says, "I've done it with Charlie Nicolas." And I'm like, "A girl, yeah?" And he was like, "Yeah, a girl." I was just like, "Okay." I went, "Does the wife know you've done this?" He says, "Yeah, she's fine with it. She's cool." And I said, "Give me 5 minutes." I said, "I'll phone you back." And I phoned Charlie and I said to him, "Charlie, going to do something for me?" I says, "This is my brother's phone number." I said, "You would make his life if you phoned him." I says, "He's just named his third girl after you, Charlie Nicolas, no S. It's on the birth certificate, the H and all that, and the Nicolas." I says, "He just hero worships you." And to his eternal credit, Charlie was like, "Oh, I'm busy." And I said, "Look, he's on his way to the hospital. You'll catch him. Please, can you do it as a favour?" She said, "I'll see what I can do." And about 20 minutes later, my brother phoned me back and he said, "You'll never guess who I've just spoken to on the phone." I said, "I've got a rough idea." He said, "Did you do that?" I said, "I might have had a hand in it, yeah." And he went, "Oh," he says, he came on the phone and he was like, "Are you Danny?" And he's just like, "Yeah, I'm Danny." And he says, "Danny, you are bonkers." Absolutely bonkers. That was his opening gambit. And he proceeded to have a 10-minute talk. And I wrote it in the book. I put it as a chapter in the book, and I just said, see when your job helps you, it's just that everything that's wonderful about your profession, and you get the chance to share something like that with somebody who's close to you. And my brother was in the room watching Charlie win the Daily Express 5-a-sides that night with us. It was his 11th birthday. It was just a brilliant moment in sport because he was up there somewhere. And I just thought, you know what, if it all ends tomorrow, so be it, but it was cracking, and he still loved Charlie. He still adores Charlie. We both adore Charlie, to be fair, but he's got the birth certificate of his third daughter to prove it. Amazing. I was really, lots of Celtic supporters have a downer on Charlie, but I think yourself and myself are one of those, or two.
Oh, you're not. You won't hear me.
Yeah.
You won't hear me criticise Charlie Nicolas.
I would never criticise Charlie Nick at all because he just did something wonderful for a member of my family, and I can never.
He kind of captured a moment in time. For me. It was a good time to be alive, the early 1980s. Being at university, being away from home for the first time, beginning to kind of frequent dodgy, low-down, loose taverns, meeting dodgy, low-down, loose people. Thinking you're the cat's pajamas, wearing dodgy clothes, and at the same time, we had a good team, and I was heartbroken when Charlie left in '83 because it was a kind of strange few years because that's when we saw the full emergence of the new firm, Dundee United and Aberdeen. Dundee United get to a European Cup semi-final. Aberdeen win the European Cup Winners' Cup. I think Aberdeen were knocked out the following year by Porto in the semi-finals. And when people write about it, they say, "Oh, that was those 5-6 years were the years of the new firm," and I'm saying, yeah, it was. But Celtic won the title in 81, 82, 86. We won the Scottish Cup in 1980, won the League Cup in 1983, won the Scottish Cup again in 1985, very, very narrowly, and in my opinion, unfairly beaten by Aberdeen in the 1984 Scottish Cup final, but that's another chapter.
We come to that.
So, Celtic contributed to that. And although we didn't hit the heights in Europe, I remember the last time I thought Celtic might have a chance in Europe was the 82-83 season when we beat Ajax away from home with Charlie and George McCluskey scoring the goals, and then we get knocked out by a fairly humdrum Real Sociedad. And I thought we could have won. We had a chance that year. We were playing some really nice football.
Charlie's goal in the keep Stadium, or was that final? Or it's the old
old Ajax, the
Stadium?
Ajax Stadium. Was it the Volendam?
The keep was Stingray, wasn't it? Feyenoord, sorry. Yeah, it was the old Ajax Stadium anyway. But what a team that was, and that game, the Parkhead game, was just something special. I remember going, but we'll probably come to those because that's something I wanted to keep on the back burner, and we'll talk about that. But there's Soren Lerby's goal in that particular game is fantastic.
What a team they had!
Yeah, and also Charlie Nicolas goal in Amsterdam's it's a thing of beauty. And they're playing in that green strip as well. It's just there's something wonderful about it, and there's something so Charlie about that goal, because it's like you kind of half expected it because it was what he was capable of. For those of you who have never ever seen Charlie in his prime, he was a phenomenal footballer, and I maintain to this day that Scotland would have qualified for the second phase of Mexico had he not been cropped against Denmark. He was having the game of his career.
Oh, that's right.
That night in Mexico, and he was. I genuinely think he could have gone on to achieve a hell of a lot more, because he was sensational against Denmark, and I was cursing the Danish defender whose name escapes me in a minute for putting him out of the game. I was distraught. Even more distraught when he left Celtic in '83, when he got carried off the pitch in Mexico in '86, because he was having an absolute stormer, for those who remember it.
I'll go further than that, Tony, and say that in terms of Scotland, the major European or World Cup finals, European Championships, I would say that performance by Charlie Nicolas against Denmark was the last time I saw a Scottish player perform at that level against a top 5 team, because Denmark were one of the top 5 in the world, and perform as well as that. I haven't seen, and others might have a different view, but I haven't seen a Scottish player playing for Scotland at major finals against a top, a genuine top 5, top 6 team, and playing as well as that until as you said, he was crocked.
And the other abiding memory of Charlie in Scotland is Archie, when he scored in his debut against Switzerland. Nicolas, he's done it! And the commentary, it's just like, he couldn't believe it. Scotland came from 2-0 down. Left foot, right foot. Yeah. Left foot, right. And then the other time was when he scored at Ibrox, the Maisie.
Yes.
Scoring the ball. And Q Archie, he's aiming for a goal. It's a brilliant goal, right? That's just like, these are ingrained in your head, right? Archie's just like, this guy's brilliant, But that particular goal at Ibrox, when it goes through Jim Stewart's hands, it's just, there's a brilliant kind of still of Jim Stewart trying to get it, but it's just through his hands. It's just brilliantly hit and swerved, because from behind a player, Jim Stewart's unsighted, but he dives in the general direction. And then the goal against Switzerland, just left foot, right foot, just technique. Again, you expected it from Charlie because he had that in his locker. And you saw that early doors at the fives. That's, all these skills, those kind of, playground street footballer skills that were honed in Maryhill, where he came from. You saw that in evident at the Wembley Arena, and then he was just doing what he does with his mates on an 11-a-side pitch, because he was good at it. You know what I mean? Not just good at it, he was arguably one of the best at it.
Yeah.
He was a fantastic footballer. He really was. He was a highly gifted and skilled technician of a forward. I mean, I don't use those words, cheaply, or I don't say that about a lot of footballers, but he could take your breath away with some of the skills that he had.
He had, I think I mentioned to you before that 3-1 game against Rangers at Parkhead, where he scored the double. He had, I'd not long started university, and I'd made the acquaintance of a nice American chap from the southern states who was here to enter to study engineering. And although we didn't really meet much of each other after the first 2 or 3 weeks because he was in a different faculty, he liked a drink, and he would be, I would be coming in at 3 a.m, and he would still be up because he was suffering from jet lag, and he had these Winston soft pack cigarettes, which for the height of cool, smoking Winston soft pack cigarettes like they do in the Hollywood films. So anyway, I kept talking about Celtic and Rangers games, and I happened to bump into him the week prior to that game in February, and he said he quite fancied coming along because some of his mates in his course had been talking about it, and I had managed to get a spare ticket, so he came along, and we're in the jungle. And honest to God, and this is not a hint of exaggeration, but see when Celtic's first goal went in, you can imagine what it was like back then. There's just this massive roar, and everyone's just going bananas. This guy who's watched baseball all his life, he's quite clued up in American sport. He was literally, it took his breath away. And when I looked at him, he was in tears. He was so overcome, and it wasn't emotion. It was like, where did that come from? And he just couldn't handle it momentarily, and he just burst into tears with the madness of it all. And he's looking at me, he's slightly embarrassed, and I'm looking at him thinking he must think we're all completely nuts. And the two of it, I think it was probably the last time I ever saw him. So the two of us basically walked from Celtic Park back into town and went to probably every boozer all the way down, through the barras and into the east end of the city centre. And he was howling with it. He was howling with the baby by the time I left him. So he's probably running, some Silicon Valley outfit. He's probably a multi-millionaire. I know there's an American, if he's still alive, who will never forget that moment, because he told me as we were getting drunk together that he had never experienced anything like that. The roar when Celtic scored.
And see, when he came back to Aberdeen, he was originally meant to sign for Celtic, but he ended up signing for Aberdeen. And Celtic lost the 1990 Scottish Cup final on penalties. Anton Rogan missed the penalty, Brian Alden scores the winner, and Charlie took one.
Yeah.
What a lot of Celtic supporters didn't know at that point, Charlie was going for the full set of medals, because it had been public knowledge that he was coming to Celtic that summer after that cup final, and lots of Celtic support, he'll miss, he'll not do that, because he plonked it in the top corner, if you remember right. And I always thought, good on you, Charlie, for being professional and doing it for the club that you played for at the time, And a lot of people weren't aware that Charlie never won the Scottish with Celtic, so he was playing for a full set of, domestic Scottish medals, which would have meant a lot to him. And he never won the Scottish Cup with Celtic, sadly. I don't think
I know.
Was that the 95 squad, maybe, was he? But never played. Or I think he might be. But, so I was always, fair play to him for that, because there was guys beside me at that game saying, he's going to miss it, he'll stick it by the post, or he'll stick it over the bar. And no. Top corner, as is Charlie.
Well, I know a few Aberdeen fans. In fact, the one of our news editor in the Herald is a massive Aberdeen fan, and they love Charlie Nicolas.
Yeah, they adore him, don't they?
For two reasons. One, he was very, very good for Aberdeen when he signed for them. He scored a barrel load, and I remember one game he was playing at Pittodrie. I can't remember who Aberdeen were playing, but he had, he scored, and it must have been the height of winter because, the first 10 or 12 rows of terracing were empty except for one wee boy. There was a wee, so Charlie scores, and then he runs over to the wall, and there's this wee lad who looked at maybe 6 or 7, and he lifts him up and gives him a big hug and puts him down. So I met Charlie years later, and I said to him, what was all that about? And he said, I wasn't having one of my better games, and he said that the team was struggling, and all I heard right in the silent moments was this wee kid just shouting Charlie Nicolas and just encouraging us. And he said, I made a promise to myself, if I manage to score in this game, I'm making a beeline for that wee lad and lifting him up. So they loved him for that, but also, as you said, they loved the fact that he scored against us, even though he was coming to us.
Yeah,
and also because he was a Celtic fanatic.
Yeah.
So there's not an Aberdeen fan that I know who didn't love Charlie Nicolas for all those reasons. They're always very fond of him. I
mean, I had relatives who stayed in Tottenham and North London, and they love him down there as well. The Arsenal fans, revered him. They thought he was great, and he had an uncanny knack of not doing much and then turning up in the London derby, scoring like a double, scoring the winner, and because it was just the games that flicked his switch. And I remember the 2 goals he scored at Wembley in the Little Cup final for Arsenal when they beat Liverpool, just prior to him signing for Aberdeen. But, as I say, for those who weren't familiar with Charlie's game originally, he was something special, wasn't he? Wasn't he called the Cannonball Kid and Champion Charlie, and for nothing, was he?
And he was the first. He was probably the first Celtic player, our first Scottish player, who, as I said before, was doing the stuff off the park that I would have done if I'd been as good as that. Now, look, I know that we have to be professional, and we celebrate players being professional and getting into all the good habits. But part of you is also thinking, it's an entertainment, and we absolutely embrace those players who, I'm not talking about who went over the score, but they actually looked as if they appreciated what they had. They looked as if they were enjoying, He was enjoying being the Celtic striker and going to all these clubs and pubs, and looking brilliant. And I'm thinking that's the way I'd cut about if I was at that. I'd be enjoying it. I mean, imagine being Celtic's number 9, scoring goals freely against Rangers.
And he did score freely against Rangers.
It doesn't get much better than that. And so I loved that about him, that he looked as if he was enjoying his career. And there weren't any tales about him overdoing it, like public drunkenness, not turning up for training or anything like that. You won't hear any of the Celtic players from that era say that he get into any bad habits. He trained. You could tell just the way he played. And people say, looking back, it was maybe missed opportunities with him. He wasn't the player he could have been, and he probably took a lot of wrong turning by signing for Arsenal rather than Liverpool. But I don't know. Great seasons we set. Playing for Celtic, Arsenal, Aberdeen, Scotland, and being loved by the fans of all those clubs.
And he also had the mullet, Kevin, which pains me greatly to say I copied 1985 at school, first year at school, and I get an absolute ribbon. 3 hours in the hairdressers underneath the big Purple Rinse Brigade hairdryer, as you would probably call it. And back then, 50 quid was a lot of money to spend on your hair, but my old man indulged me.
You're
50 quid.
You spent 50 quid on a haircut.
my dad.
I mean,
I did.
As you can tell.
Because my father indulged me and said, "That's what you want, son, okay. Are you sure you want to do this? Put yourself through it." Dad, I want. And I went in and I remember saying to all the girls who were there, I said, "I want a Charlie Nicolas hairdo." Sure enough, I came out and it was like with the show glow and all that. And I felt $1 million. Went to school on Monday and I felt like 2 bob. I was like, I'm doing this for Charlie. He's got a lot to answer for. But, I grew to like it, and lots of others grew to like it as well, i.e. girls in your class in school. So that was always a winner. So, yeah, but I've told them all of this. You can always share laughing. And I thought Charlie could pull that kind of look off, as you say, because he was cool. He was the epitome of cool. Young Tony Haggerty got in about St Bride's High School, maybe not so much, so... But that's how much he influenced you in terms of culture as well. I mean, he was featured on that BBC programme Icons, wasn't he? Because he was.
Yeah, I saw it.
He was a football icon, and he told the story about ripping the 20 quid and then watching back in, sellotape together. But
and I know also for a fact that the narrative when he left. And Celtic had a lot to do with this at the time. Celtic let it be known and orchestrated a kind of press campaign which suggested that they couldn't do anything more to keep Charlie, that had made him a fantastic offer, and that he was hell-bent on going south.
Yeah.
That's not true. That's a long way. That's a long way from what actually happened. My understanding, and you can guess where this is probably coming from, but that's not how it happened. Charlie Nicolas would have stayed around for another year or so, but the powers that be at Celtic at the time, old Desmond and the board, when they realised they had such a hot property on their hands, there was a feeling that they'd been shortchanged by Liverpool in '77 when Kenny Dalglish left.
Kenny, yeah.
Because we got 440,000.
Yeah.
It was a record, I think, at the time. I mean, we knew within a year we'd been had, my lad.
Yes. What, when he's running over the advertising hoardings to celebrate the fact he scored the winner in the European Cup final?
440 grand, my God. So with Charlie, they're looking at 750, 800, 850. And my understanding is that they couldn't, the old analogy, they would have basically run him to the airport for that sort of money, come hell or high water. But you might, I'm interested in this.
Charlie would have stayed for
it.
Charlie would have stayed for a modest rise.
Yeah, and they weren't.
They were hell bent on getting him out the door because you saw the pound signs.
Yeah, and he wasn't. I mean, I'll never ever discuss what players were on, and I got this from the horse's mouth. But when I heard what he was being paid when he left Celtic, it was a disgrace.
Yeah,
shocking. I mean, it was exploitation,
derisory, wasn't it? It was insulting actually for a man of his talent. But and lots of people don't know that, Kevin, that he would have stayed for a modest rise.
Yep.
And the powers that be were like, nah, we're taking the $750,000.
Yeah.
Because that was just after a few years after the £1 million fees kicked off by Brian Clough signing Trevor Francis. So they were high 7-figure fees, and Celtic were thinking high 6, possible 7 for Charlie, and they were, as you say, they were taking it come hell or high water. But because I think he says himself, he would gladly have stayed because he was enjoying it. He was enjoying. Yeah, I mean, his last game was at Ibrox when he scored those 2 penalties and Celtic lost the league on a brilliant day for Scottish football when Aberdeen, Celtic or Dundee United could have won the title.
That's right.
And Dundee United were playing Dundee in a derby on the last game of the season at Dens. Celtic are playing Rangers in the last game of the season at Ibrox. I can't remember who Aberdeen were playing, but you're thinking, that just wouldn't be allowed to happen today. It just wouldn't be allowed to happen, and as you say, you look at those times through maybe as tinted spectacles, but they were brilliant years in Scottish football when Aberdeen and Dundee United were around. And I always feel that Celtic and Rangers, that kind of rivalry abated for a while because they didn't want to trouble them. They were like, you're no our rivals.
Absolutely.
Aberdeen and Dundee United are the teams we need to beat now because we can take care of you. Because Rangers never won a title for 9 years back then, from 78 or 79 to 86, wasn't it?
We had some intense games against Aberdeen, especially.
Yeah.
But you touched on a few minutes ago on the fact that Charlie never won a Scottish Cup with Celtic. I had the unhappy distinction of being at all the games where we were knocked out.
Yeah.
Between 1980, I was at Hampden in 1980 for the Riot Cup final. 1981, we were beaten after a replay in the semi-final by Dundee United.
Right, 3-2.
It was 3-2. It was a great game.
It was a brilliant game of football, yeah.
But they were, united when they played. But I think because of the way the style that we played and the style that Jim McLean played, there was just like a game of skill. They were high energy.
Yeah.
A lot of skillful players, and United scalped our arses a couple of times playing really, really good football.
Ralph Milne was brilliant. Ralph Milne was our top player for United, Sturrock and all that.
Graham Payne was my favourite United. But then in 82, we went to Pittodrie and we were beaten 1-0.
Yep.
John Hewitt, I think, scored.
He did.
82, 83, were beaten at Hampden in the semi by Aberdeen, and there was that shocking foul by Neil Cooper within like a minute of the kickoff on Charlie. Well, they just basically decided, this guy's the dangerous man. He's getting it. and Charlie Nicolas told me about it. I don't want to imply that me and Charlie were pals, but we got to know each other, just in the line of business that we're both in. And he didn't bear any bitterness. He said, as I recall, he said he was kind of half expecting something. Neil Cooper was a cruncher.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in 83, he'd gone
by then, yeah.
So that's why. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. There was no... he was thoroughly professional, and I wouldn't have expected him to do anything else than bury that penalty in the 1990 final.
Yeah. And as I say, he was just that... My early memories are watching him R81, that Rangers game, and then seeing him take the English clubs to the cleaners in the Daily Express tournament. It's just like it's one of those Celtic curiosities of trophies that they win. They just then the only Scottish club to win insert trophy name here, and they do. And as I've seen it before we came on air, I mean, I would love to see it again. I just wish somebody would restore it if they have it in a VHS or a Betamax tape, because when you Google it on the site,
somewhere it must be lying.
It'll be in the BBC vault somewhere, yeah. But I've tried on social media and the internet to get it. I just can't find it. But I'm hoping that somebody out there has it, because I would love to see it again. Because just vintage Charlie playing the English at their own game, and as I say, taking the mick at them because he was a wonderfully talented footballer. And yeah, like you, lots of people say he chose the wrong club when he went down south, but I think he lived a life, didn't he? Of a footballer. Euphemistically, he says.
He's wrong. He also, I don't think George Graham ultimately was the right manager for him. I think the way that Arsenal played, and this is what you'll hear from Arsenal supporters, that although Charlie didn't score as many goals as he was expected to, they really appreciated what he was trying to do when he played. And Arsenal supporters themselves will tell you that although George Graham, won a couple of titles, late 80s, early 90s, the football was quite turgid at Highbury. And Charlie provided a splash of colour for them.
Yeah, they liked their players like that, didn't they? I mean, they had Charlie Jaws previously in the double winning year, that kind of stuff, and going back 71, that kind of stuff. But yeah, Arsenal fans will tell you that they like their flamboyance and flair players, and Mavericks. Because I think they were the one that signed Peter Maranello, who was a Maverick as well, wasn't he?
That's right.
And again, it didn't work out for Mar, but they bought him for that reason, that he was somebody who had a bag of tricks and was a bit different.
You're talking about the footage of that Daily Express Fives. Other footage that I would love to see, and I'll just mention that this is an aside because I'm sure we'll do a programme in this, is the lost footage of the 1970 European Cup semi-final against Leeds United. Yeah. So you go on you Google that, and it's the same. It's like a UEFA production, so maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Top quality footage of the game at Hampden, and there's a little bit of footage of the game at Elland Road. Somewhere, I mean,
a minute. The first minute when Connor scores.
The first massive all British European Cup semi-final played at Hampden, 137,000. And so the footage is there. So are we saying that the BBC or whoever has somehow buried that or lost it? That footage must exist, and if it doesn't exist, it can only be because somebody's lost. But why you wouldn't be? See, if you're doing a clear out, as I'm told that the BBC routinely do this or used to do this. It doesn't happen now because of digital process, but routinely every so often they would sort of clear out a lot of their old reels. But you wouldn't be throwing out that.
No.
I mean,
no chance.
Has anybody asked this question at Celtic where that is? Because see if they stuck it on. See if they stuck it on the Celtic TV channel, and being Celtic charged us all an arm and a leg just to watch it. I'd pay it. I mean, I know I shouldn't be saying this, but if they were charging like 30 quid one off to see this, I'd pay it.
Yeah, one of my favourite photos comes from that game. It's with Bertie.
With the top hat.
I've often said that, that should be a statue in Mary Hill, and it should just be entitled Gallus, because that's just Gallus. That's the epitome of Gallus and Bertie Auburn's.
I drive past his birth. I drive past the flat he was born in into work when I'm coming into Glasgow.
I've said this before as well, Kevin, that I want the tunnel at Celtic Park to be renamed the 1030 Tunnel, because two of his greatest anecdotes took place in the tunnel. He was coming out of the tunnel at Lisbon and singing a Celtic song, and then that brilliant clip with John Gregg. What's your bonus? We're on a tenner. We're on a fiver. My fiver's guaranteed. And he should have the 1030 tunnel and have all of his sayings. Entertain.
Are you going to explain what the 1030 is for the Generation Zers who might be tuning in here? 1030
is rhyming slang for Bertie, basically. So how good would that be? The 1030 tunnel.
Yeah.
And have entertain, for it's a grand old team to play for, because he liked to sing song. My fiver's guaranteed, that kind of stuff. I just think that would be wonderful.
I'd love it.
It'd be great, and also, have that picture of him in the fedora hat with a ball, just come on, it's what we do. It's just utterly brilliant. But started off with Charlie, ended up with Bertie, but there you go. That's the tangential nature of this show, Kevin. We just kind of spitball. I mean, you always find a rabbit hole to go down when you're talking about Celtic. But that curiosity that is the Daily Express 5-a-side Challenge Trophy. Celtic, the only Scottish winners. A Charlie Nicolas inspired team coached by Jim Lumsden, featuring Will Stay, Peter Latchford, Danny Craney, and who that team I
Willie.
mentioned. Willie
McStay, Danny Craney,
Danny Craney,
Peter Latchford, Charlie, Davy Weir, is it no
John Weir, yeah,
and Garner, yeah, that was
Willie Garner, yeah, that was a sick, yeah. And brilliant stuff. And as I say, I'd love to see it again. I'd just love to see that footage if somebody.
Yeah, me too.
I'm hoping that somebody has it, but and like what you said, that the Ellen Road and the Hampden game would be great to see in their entirety. But I'm sure if we get invited back, Kevin, if they're as kind to us this week about last week, then we'll cover many things. That probably being one of them. But guys, I hope you've enjoyed Grand Old Team episode 2, Charlie Nick's Express Delivery. I've been Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10 on X, our Twitter handle. He's been the wonderful Kevin McKenna. Kevin, again, the quickest hour of the week. It's been magic.
Yeah. Loved it.
Tremendous.
Never again will the Daily Express 5-a-sides have as much coverage as we've given that tonight.
Correct. And they better be glad about that and happy about that.
Once again, my personal thanks to the Celtic Wiki, and I don't know who the boys are who do it, but
tremendous
any of you, if you've never come across the Celtic Wiki, have a look at it, because it's a fascinating. It's my favourite Celtic website.
As you say, you could get lost for hours in that.
Yeah.
I think even my dogs are enjoying the Celtic Wiki at the minute, as you can hear, and that will take that as the ideal time to say cheerio. But thanks for tuning in.